If it was punctured, it was like a screen door. It would cause damage right where the hit was, but this uniform collapse, and then when you look at the powder, if it collapsed, it would collapse in big chunks.
Jesse,
Then I was at the site 2 weeks after it happened with Governor Pataki, right? And they had to cease digging that day. You know why? They were finding pockets of molten liquid metal underneath. Now, if everything took place, Piers, 150 floors up, why was there molten metal underneath?
It
requires 3,000 degrees to melt metal.
Jesse, you're a patriot. You're a good
I don't know if I am.
You consider yourself to be a good American?
I've been a mayor, I've been a governor, and I served 6 years and was honorably discharged from the United States Navy.
Do you accept that some people, many people, will be listening to this and consider it to be quite offensive, what you're saying?
What, to question government? I think it's quite offensive not to question government.
No, not to. It's more than.
I think it's offensive to sit back like a zombie and accept everything you're told.
I get that. But when you're telling the American public, as you are right now, and indeed the wider world, this airs around the world, that Dick Cheney, Vice President of the United States...
Well, I'd like some answers from him.
Yeah, but you didn't just say you want some answers. You said he knew and was responsible for the biggest atrocity in American history on his own ground. You believe that?
No. Mr. Morgan, you believe he wasn't? You believe he wasn't aware? You believe Bush wasn't aware?
All right.
My question
But I've been answering all of them. You haven't answered one yet.
I'm interviewing you, Jesse. That's the way this works.
Since you dodge any logical discussion on your show, Piers, that's why I post this open letter to you. But let's have some fun with you. Because I'm about to demonstrate how you must be the dumbest journalist on the planet if you believe the shit that you're spewing on CNN.
Let's move on. Do you believe that President Obama is a puppet of the CIA, as you've suggested?
A puppet of the CIA? I didn't suggest that.
Let me play a clip to you.
What you're saying is Barack Obama was a CIA agent?
He was what they call a CIA asset. He was enrolled in the early 1980s by Zbigniew Brzezinski. Mr. Brzezinski is the head of the Trilateral Commission, and Mr. Obama had been pre-identified as one of their candidates to be U.S. president.
When you consider that the CIA was founded by two Wall Street lawyers when they tutored Clark Clifford, who authored the NSA Act, and you consider that every single one of Obama's appointees is a Wall Street banker, and Zbigniew Brzezinski is one of the main architects of the New World Order, the Council on Foreign Relations, and the Trilateral Commission, one of the premier scumbags, then it's not so far-fetched that Obama might be CIA.
Let me show you my face. What
That's
the
what
hell
I did.
are you talking about, you idiot? Is what I would have said to that guy.
No, because you have a
That's my face.
No, because you have a TV show to do. You can't be calling guests idiots.
You can.
Well, you shouldn't. But anyway,
Why not?
well, because that's your style's different than mine. But that was him saying that.
You allowed this crackpot airtime on your show to spout complete nonsense.
I guess when you disrespect a viewer every single time you broadcast by being full of shit, it's no big deal if you disrespect them more by calling them an idiot. Huh, Piers? But let's prove who's the crackpot and who's the idiot. Are you disrespecting the fire investigators? Are you disrespecting the family members that are criticizing the 9/11 panel? Perhaps you could explain about the instant messages that warned Jewish and Israeli citizens about the attacks. Or maybe you think that there's psychic students all over New York City. Or that the put options that were placed on the airlines, Boeing, and many of the financial institutions from the World Trade Center were also just a coincidence. Well, then you must also have an explanation for why there's been no investigation into those put options. Oh, maybe you could ask former executive director of the CIA, Buzzy Kromgard, since the majority of those options were placed through his A.B. Brown and Deutsche Bank. And maybe you can explain why that same bank is on the leaked Pentagon document from earlier in 2001, where they had already planned the plunder of Iraqi oil fields. You must also believe it's a coincidence, or be able to explain how that same bank is tied to Swiss Re and Munich Re, the companies that insured the towers for Slimeballstein just 6 weeks before the attacks that specifically covered acts of terrorism. And maybe you can explain why this traitor was meeting with the head of Pakistani intelligence, who is alleged to have wired the $100,000 to the alleged lead hijacker, Mohammed Atta. Maybe you can explain how 19 dipshits that probably couldn't even drive a car were able to defeat NORAD, and how they were able to defeat the known laws of physics, as well as building performance and aircraft design limitations. Flying these aircraft at more than 140 knots above their limitations where the wings will fall off in straight and level flight. Incidentally, that means they could fly supersonic at their cruising altitude. So, please explain. Maybe you think it's a coincidence that all of the CEOs just happened to be at a charity golf event on a Tuesday morning, and thus they were spared. Maybe you think it's a coincidence that a Bush-run company handled security for the World Trade Center, the departure airports, and one of the airlines. You must be able to explain why Jeb put the Florida National Guard on alert just before the attacks. Or let me explain for you. That was the getaway car in case everything came unraveled right away, that Jeb and Georgie could fly off where they have 300,000 acres in Uruguay and there's no extradition treaty. And could you please explain, Mr. Morgan, how Muhammad Atta's passport survived this? And please explain how they were able to make jet fuel explode, since it is not explosive until it's compressed and vaporized, such as within the jet engine. And please explain how jet fuel and 19 cavemen were able to turn nearly 1 million tons of structural steel and steel-reinforced concrete to dust. And can you please explain how they were able to make 4 airliners disappear, leaving virtually no wreckage, other than wreckage that had no credibility, such as the wrong engine that was found on Murray Street? Oh, wait, I get it. That's right. These guys were pretty special. In fact, they even returned from the afterlife to profess their innocence. So making some wreckage disappear must have been no problem for them at all. Because I always thought that airplanes left wreckage, so I guess that explains that part. Boy, these pesky devils, I guess since they could return from the afterlife, they'd have no problem having bridge caissons take ferryboat rides down the Hudson River that morning either, would they now, Piers? You know, the evidence is overwhelming, irrefutable, and so abundant. It's about as subtle as a wheelbarrow full of cement falling off of a scaffold, Mr. Morgan. But let's have a brief history lesson, just so I don't have to go through all of the factual evidence. Maybe you've never heard of the Reichstag fire, where Hitler burned his own parliament building and blamed it on, and I quote, communist terrorists in order to justify his war with Poland. Then he forces through German parliament the Enabling Act, which is identical to the Patriot Act. The MO was exactly the same for Bush and 9/11. So it's not surprising that they took a play out of the Nazi playbook. After all, Bush comes from a long line of Nazis, as does much of his staff, such as Karl Rove, who's also the son and grandson of Nazis, and also who helped another Nazi gain power in California, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Here he is, meeting with the man who hosted the charity golf event on the morning of 9/11 that saved the CEOs from the World Trade Center from being victims in the attacks. They even planned something identical to 9/11 in the 60s called Operation Northwoods, where they had planned to use simulated hijackings in order to promote a wave of indignation to support war with Cuba. But then, Mr. Morgan, maybe you can explain why this piece of walking excrement, who authored the Patriot Act before 9/11, was promoted to head of Homeland Security for his role in stifling the investigation and for deporting the Israeli suspects that were arrested with a van full of explosives headed for the George Washington Bridge. And maybe you can explain why these 3 FBI agents were given promotions for their role in stifling the investigation into the flight school students that would have stopped the attacks. Oh, just coincidence, right? And you must be able to explain why dipshit W signed the 199 IWF order, which stifled the investigation into the flight school students, threatening the FBI agents with arrest.
War's different.
Well, we're at war with Osama bin Laden.
Oh, then you must be able to explain this for us, Mr. Morgan. Please do.
What did you think of Guantanamo Bay?
I think it's atrocious. I think it's awful. I'm so disappointed that Barack Obama didn't close it. In a court of law, every one of these guys is going to walk, because anything gotten by torture is inadmissible.
Well, Piers, I guess I don't need to ask you why Eric Holder flip-flopped on the civilian court and military tribunal issue, because there is no evidence whatsoever to support the official hogwash. Their only choice is to try these people in a military tribunal, so they don't even have to show the defense lawyers the evidence, because all the evidence they have is the tortured confession. But a Holder, just like Obama, who flip-flop, anti-war, bring the troops home, Obama, save the nation, hope and change, has now got us involved in more wars. And just like this traitorous bitch who couldn't criticize Obama sharply enough, but then at the Tucson tribute, she's all over his leg. So I could go on and on and on, Mr. Morgan, but the facts are already so clear that madmen bent on enslaving the entire human race and with an insatiable lust for money and power have embarked on a global crime spree of unseen proportions, murdering millions of men, women, and children who had nothing to do with 9/11. Of course, it was necessary to secure the media and also to kill anyone that stood in their way. The only ones who benefit from war are the weapons manufacturers and the bankers. When you have a war where you're defending an invasion or fighting a country, you can achieve and announce victory, and thus the bankers and the weapons manufacturers lose when peace breaks out. So what they did is they invented a way where they could carry on war relentlessly and endlessly without any borders and without ever being able to define victory. But first, they need to get everybody in line by promoting fear and hate through the fear of terrorism. That's where you and your mainstream media networks come in. And before I conclude, Mr. Morgan, let's play a short clip from your network, CNN, from Gulf War I, just so we can show how your network has lied in the past.
To my right, to my left, and there's a cloud of something. It looks like it might have been an explosion, a cloud. A white say.
Yeah, that's right. These liars and traitors never left the studio claiming to be reporting live from Saudi Arabia.
My apologies for that. He's putting on a gas mask.
In conclusion, Mr. Morgan, you must be under the severely misguided notion that the only people watching your network or Fox News or any of the mainstream media are the brainwashed, browbeaten, confused, and distracted victims/products of mass media hype, government propaganda, and a public education. This letter is to inform you you were sadly mistaken. There are countless true patriots out there working to awaken the sleepers, and the people of the world are polarizing against these murder-for-profit, enemy of humanity, traitors that have overrun the executive, legislative, and judicial branches of the U.S. government. We will be gathering them up and taking them to see justice. We will be trying them, we will be convicting them, we'll be sentencing them, and we will be executing them, eventually, once America has righted herself. May I suggest, Mr. Morgan, that you take a tour of 20th century history, a tour of the 9/11 evidence, before you suggest that it's unpatriotic for exposing the murder for oil, murder for profit, murder for personal, political, and financial gain cabal that has unfortunately taken over the U.S. government. Because rest assured, as justice will find its way, that will be coming for you too.